Welcome back to the Board Drill Podcast. My name is Kyle Bradburn, and I'm here with my co-host, Matt Dixon. And tonight we have the head football coach at Florida High, Jarrod Hickman, on. Yay! Thanks for coming on.
Appreciate it.
Coach Hickman has been the head coach at Florida High for almost 20 years now.
Bradburn know.
His special guest.
All right,
Let Bradburn know if he wants to have a coach's wife podcast, I can do it.
We can do that.
You'll bite off more than you can chew there.
We are not editing that out either.
I'll give you good stuff.
The ironing board drill.
Good
We're not going to edit any of this out, by the way. We're
No,
just going to
let
keep
it
rolling
roll.
through. I love it.
Let it roll.
So Jarrod Hickman's been the head coach for quite a long time at Florida High. He is a 2-time state runner-up, 10 times to the Final Four, 14 region titles. And out of his almost 20 years, they have only missed the playoffs twice. So super successful run. Obviously, Coach, we talk about it all the time. I know you haven't gotten over that big hump, but there's no one more confident that one day you're going to get over it than me. Probably the biggest fan of your staff that you guys have outside of Florida High. But, Coach, thanks for coming on the podcast. We appreciate you on tonight.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you guys having me, and this will be fun. And let's not forget you were a part of helping build some of that, Kyle. So we appreciate your work, man. We never forget that stuff.
I may have been the anchor that was weighing you down, but now you guys are just soaring in the sky, so it's fantastic. So tonight we're going to talk about two-way players and the usage of that. Florida High, like Coach Hickman said, I was there at one point. Coach, have you ever had – what's your typical number year to year of players that you carry on varsity?
On varsity, I would say between 38 to 45 is really good for us. We've probably been in that spot the last 7 years, maybe 8 years. And so that's a really good number for us. But it's not always been that way.
Yeah, no doubt. I remember there are years that you only had like 32 and down in the 20s every once in a while. So talk to me a little bit about how many two-way players do you guys typically have?
Honestly, it's not as much as we used to have as our school grew just a little bit. And some of our philosophy changed, but always at a place at our size, we're going to have, 3 or 4 kids, depending on the time period of the year and what we're trying to do, what we're trying to develop, play. And there's going to be 4 to 5 kids that we can't live without probably playing both ways a good amount of time.
And so as you get into that knowing, and obviously in past years you've had much more than 4 or 5, talk about how, maybe even more so back in the day that you split practice time for those players that contributed on offense and defense. How did you run that? What did a normal week look like?
Yeah, I would say it still looks like, a lot of what we did then. But, once we identify those kids who we think we have to play, or at least certainly be ready to play as the playoff run happens and all those things, we do a lot of that when they're younger on the JV level. We make them play both ways when they're on JV. There are very few kids that don't go both sides of the ball when they're younger. So we can kind of look and see what that development might look like, who really can help us. And then as they get older, we tend to split that up a little bit. But a typical week of practice would look like, Monday's a big install day, a big film review day, trying to really just get everything corrected and then put in. And then Tuesday is a defensive day for us. That is where our older kids only get defense. The younger guys actually go to offense and kind of make it to work that way. And then we will finish with about 10, 15 minutes worth of offense where those two-way guys will flip over and we will rep a lot of base stuff, things that we have to be good at no matter what, when everybody knows it's coming, kind of things. And then Wednesday's an offensive day. We flip that whole schedule, get a lot of work that way. And then again, we'll finish with defense. And then Tuesday or Thursday's that typical game walkthrough, trying to make sure they get both sides of the ball and, fine tune everything.
Do you, throughout the course of that week, are you guys making sure, how do you make sure everyone gets sufficient reps? Are you counting anything? Or are you just saying, hey, make sure Johnny sees this 5 times or anything like that?
Yeah, I think our defensive staff does a really good job of scripting exactly what they would like to see, especially in certain situations, maybe some looks that if we get caught in this, how are we going to react and how are we going to respond to this, and making sure those those starters and certainly those guys that are two-way guys are getting those kind of looks at any moment. And then same thing on offense. I mean, Ashton Hampton this year for us, I think, was one of the best two-way players in the country. He's headed to Clemson. He was a guy. I don't need to see him run slant routes and run certain things that everybody knows he's going to do. But if we're running some combinations, some rub stuff, some things that we've got to just work on timing, then he absolutely has got to make sure we get those reps and get them right.
Yeah, no
Hey, Coach. Sorry, Kyle. Go ahead.
No, you got it. Go ahead.
Hey, Coach. One of the issues we always had was with our players that went both ways, making sure that try to keep them as fresh as possible, being during the week and in game. Endurance-wise, what do you guys try to do to make sure those guys are ready to go on Friday night and that they stay fresh on the field?
Yeah, I think one of the things we talk to our guys about, especially as they get older, is how to manage your body, communicate to us. Honestly, it's been different. Ashton Hampton was a guy this year that he could play, and literally, I think for 3 years, played 120 plus snaps a game for us, special teams included. But his body could handle it. He was in really good shape. Ronnie Harrison did a lot for us as well a few years back. But there are other guys. Listen to their body, communicate. We try to limit them on Mondays a lot and just let them almost be a coach on the field. Again, I don't need to see them do a lot of the base stuff we're trying to do on Monday unless it's really important. And then Thursday, same thing. If they're an offensive guy, they're going to get that first scripted, series, and then they don't need to be in anymore after that. And then defensively, the same thing. Let's make sure they're in on a couple certain situations, but not overdo it, and then harp on them about really taking care of their bodies. And if they're serious about being two-way players, then they've got to show us that they're doing a really good job of managing their bodies and those kind of things too.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think at times as football coaches in the past, not so much now in the future, but we haven't prioritized rest and understanding how bodies work. And sometimes rest is the best thing. And I learned that much as when I was a head track coach. It's like, look, just give them the day off. And I'm not saying you can't just give them the whole day off of football practice, but it's amazing if you just give them the day off of some of the high intensity stuff, how quickly a kid bounces back and you're like, oh, wow, he is full throttle now. So
yeah, for sure.
Becomes an important thing. So let's shift into game mode now. On a game night, is there a specific criteria you use to rest players during certain times? Is it a feel? Is it a time of the game? Is it an opponent? Like, what's going on with that?
To be honest with you, Kyle, it's win, man. I won't lie to you. If those guys have got to play, they got to play. If there's a chance to get them out in situations, if we got a lead, if we're playing well, of course, I think we will try to manage their bodies. Again, I think those are things we talk about in our Sunday meetings. Hey, let's be really smart here with this kid if we get a chance to rest him. But at the end of the day, you've got to win. I think this is a state that challenges you every week. No lead is safe. And so I think you're trying to make sure that you're winning and doing all of those things because everybody puts in a lot of time and a lot of effort. But, of course, if there are situations to get a kid out and rest, be smart. I think our kids, again, they've always done a good job of just saying, Coach, I need a few. If we had a long drive on defense, hey, let's get them a rest on offense here, for a couple of plays, get a couple first downs. Same thing. If we had a long drive on offense, let's be smart the first couple plays of defense if we can afford it to give those guys a chance. I know Kevin Helms, who's been with me, and Kyle, Kevin so well. He's done a great job of guys like that of, hey, maybe we can keep them off the field till they get each, 45, 50-yard line, and then, hey, it's go time.
Yeah, me and him talk about that 45-yard line rule quite a bit.
Yep.
He said basically, it's not always in every game, but he really tries to hold to that rule as much as he can, where those kids are really fresh late in the game.
Yeah, for sure.
And according to Kevin, you guys have been really successful doing that. So that's a pretty good idea of the way to do it, and having a mark that way exactly when that switch has to happen. I think even the kids knowing it is important.
Yep.
I very different. The 1 year I was a head coach, Matt was at an 8A school. You're at a smaller school. I was at a school with 19 kids. We've talked about on this podcast before. So my way of doing it was my timeouts were our break.
Yeah.
Yeah, because every kid played both ways. So I had to really strategically use my timeouts. They weren't for the end of the game. My timeouts were for when my kids, I could tell they couldn't go. I had to burn one right then.
Yeah,
And
sure.
so it was really funny. Everybody talks about timeouts in your meeting and everything. I'm like, I called a timeout. My kids came over and I'm like, don't speak, get water, relax.
Yep.
So it kind of, you can see those varying levels of things when you're pushing kids both ways. So like you said, in-game performance can influence these decisions. Is there let's say, you guys have been pretty good. Is there a number that once you guys are up that you start pulling kids or you start resting those things? Or it's just feel of the game?
Yeah, I wish it was that easy. No, I think it's just feel. There's been some times where we were able to be smart after a first quarter, and start really trying to say, hey, let's be smart, spot use a kid, kind of see how this thing's going to go. But I think it's just more feel of the game because, again, we play some guys that, we might even play well, but they've got a couple home run hitters that, all of a sudden you're up, you're up 14, you're up 17, and then all of a sudden you're in a one-score game. So for me, it's always been feel. I wish I was a really good numbers cruncher and used a lot of the data and those things too, but feel has always been good for me, and that's just kind of how I've done it.
100%. Matt, I know you have a few questions, right?
I'd like to go back to one thing real quick if we could.
Yeah.
You talked about Mondays having, your dudes be coaches, right?
Yep.
The guys that they're coming out, they know what they're doing. For the maybe the coaches that are listening to this that are maybe not sure what that looks like, could you kind of explain what you expect from the players of that day and how do you communicate that to them?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's part of my job to making sure that once they've gotten to that point, we tell them, look, you're the ultimate competitor, but at some point in time, we've got to give you a little bit of a break, and Monday's a great day to do it. And I think that what our kids see and what our coaches see is a total investment by your best players. Like this kid is into it as a coach, and he's telling you or making the calls or making a check, but he's not physically doing it. He's backed by the coaches coaching. And, I think we've got a lot of investment from our better players by doing it that way. They take a lot of pride and a lot of ownership that way. And obviously it gives them the rest that we're trying to get to. But everybody on that field can see that so-and-so is coaching, and they're invested in it. They're paying attention. They watch film. They got the checks pretty quick. And so they can really see what's going on. So it's been a really good thing for us both ways to get an investment part by our team and our players, and then ultimately rest those legs.
And I love that. I love seeing players take ownership of their program, and I think it builds a stronger core when you do that. So that's awesome stuff, Coach.
Yep.
Yeah, that's perfect. When you have the investment, kids are coaching kids, right? We talk about that when we used to be teachers in the classroom. What was it? Student-led instruction was like a big thing with admin. And there's a reason why. When you have older players that are out there coaching up younger players, it makes life a whole lot easier because you're instilling that culture that you have, and it becomes a super important thing. So talk about how you tailor your offensive and defensive schemes to maybe capitalize on those specific skills by those dual role players.
Yeah, I mean, again, ultimately those guys got to touch the ball. I mean, they're really good players. They're there for a reason, even if they're a tight end, even if they're, an O-lineman. We probably do it less with our interior guys nowadays than we used to or could afford to. It's become more skill position related than anything else. But offensively, it's make sure our guys get a chance to touch the ball and make plays. So when they're in, I'm not running a kid on a ton of routes and he's not getting opportunities or he's out there blocking forever. Let's be honest, the kid needs to touch the ball. Let's get him the ball. I think defensively, again, our coaches do such a good job of where do they need to have an impact in the game. Moving a linebacker from short side to wide side in high school because of the hashes, certainly moving the secondary guys around to match up with the other team's, better receivers. So I think that's a lot of game plan and how we want to use those guys. We would really want to make sure that productivity when we go back and watch the film is there and not look back and go, man, we missed some opportunities by not getting our guys a chance to make plays.
Yeah, totally agree. And one of these days I'm going to convince Kevin and Juice to run a corner blitz because
I'm for it.
Anyone knows me. I used to run it double-digit times a game, and it was fantastic in high school.
Yeah.
I've been trying to convince Kevin and Juice to run it maybe for a decade now.
I want to say they did later on in one of our games where we had a check just based on a formation that they came from the short side, and we had something late this year. You have to ask them, but I think we did. But you're right. To me, in high school, the hashes make the game dictate a little bit about where people have to go or what they want to do. And because they're so wide, coming from that corner blitz, it doesn't take long to get there, and you can do it well.
And boy, those guys are athletic. I love blitzing guys that can run down quarterbacks. It's
Yep.
fun. So real quick, when you talk about the two-way players and deciding their role, do they have a primary position where if maybe they were slightly banged up and you only had to play in one way, this kid is definitely a wide receiver, or he's a DB, or he's a D end? Do you guys have that going on at Florida High?
Yeah, 100%. And that happened to us a lot this year.
Yes,
I know we had a ton of injuries early in the season. And so once guys came back that, for an example, we had a really good receiver DB kid that started both ways in the spring, had a shoulder injury in the spring, and we did not get him back till about week 6 or 7. And once we did that, we basically said, because of some other injuries, he had to only play offense kind of the rest of the season. And we absolutely did that on both sides of the ball. We've done that for a while now. That if it comes down to it, we've got to decide where he can best help us. And, he'll probably stay mostly on that side of the ball, especially week to week. As you get to the end of the year, you got to kind of cut it loose and play ball wide open. But we've definitely did that this year and have had to do that in the past.
So that kind of is a nice segue right into the next question is, how do you guys handle injuries during the season? I know this year particularly was a little tough on you guys, but talk about how you handle injuries with these two-way guys and how you shift guys around and what you've done.
Yeah, again, I think if they're two-way guys and they're banged up, honestly, we try to rest them as much as we can, get some reps here and there. We had a couple receivers with hamstrings that also played nickel or DB, and so we just had to be really, really careful with how we manage their bodies all year long. And again, I wish I was good enough to do a lot of the innovative things where you're counting reps and counting those things with what's going on today. But I think we just can build a relationship with our kids because most of the time we've known our kids since elementary or middle school. Guys, speak up. If you're being bothered today, you've got to say something so that we can rest that body. We had to do it late in the year with our running back because we were down to one veteran running back with some good young kids who was also our starting safety. And, I know Kevin didn't rep him much in practice on defense, just made sure he knew what to do if we needed him because he was having to carry the ball 18 to 20 times now on offense because we lost the Danzy kid, who was elite for us all year long.
Was that 7?
No, 7's the receiver. The Danzy kid's the one that's going to FSU. That's the fastest kid in the country. Once we lost him, we had to really adjust some things all over the place.
Was he the kick returner? Sorry.
Yeah, running back, kick returner. He's the kid, the 400-meter, 200-meter kid that.
Coach, real quick, how many kick returns did he have this year?
Number 7 I think he had 5. He had 4 games in a row.
4 in a row.
4 in a row, 4 games in a row, and then I think he had 5 total.
What are you doing kicking to a kid after he's got?
It's high school ball, man. High school ball. They, we adjusted. We moved him around. We did a pretty good job with our schemes, I think. But then there's sometimes, man, like they don't know where it's going. Some of these guys, if you don't have a kicker, so.
I couldn't believe it. I've watched some of your film because you let me be on your huddle. And I'm like, they kicked it to that kid again. Yep. What are they thinking?
Yeah.
So, Matt, go ahead. I know you had another question.
Yeah, I just want to kind of talk about the off-season training. I know we tried to do a lot of position-specific stuff in the off-season. How do you gear that into your program for guys that you got a lot of guys going both ways? How do you work those guys through your off-season?
Yeah, no, that's a great thing, and that's exactly what we try to do. We do a lot of position-specific stuff. Honestly, a coach has a day during our off season. If the DB coach is a Tuesday, everybody in our program knows that that's a DB day, and they make their schedule to make sure that they get a chance to get out there and get those 30 minutes of DB work. If they're a DB guy, young or old, receivers might have a Wednesday or a Thursday, and we try to make sure we spend that time to get that good development. And the thing I think that we've done a pretty good job of is work around multi-sport guys. I'm a huge multi-sport guy, believe in it, did it, helped me. We want our skilled kids to be track athletes and all those things, but if they're baseball, but if they can get over and get a part of that position-specific stuff, like you're saying, it's important. So if they're two-way guys, we highly encourage them to get both. And fortunately for us, our kids are competitors. They love to work. So they don't miss on those days unless they would have a game or a meet. And, But again, one of the things that I think is so good for us, and this is where I think it helps maybe more than anywhere, is we make those guys play both ways when they're younger. And,
Yeah.
We've seen them. We know who can have. So it happened this year where there were some kids, skilled kids who, because they played corner or safety when they were a freshman, we brought them over and said, you got to be ready in case of this emergency. Or we had a week where we had so many linemen banged up. One of our starting nose guard came over and started the game actually at left tackle.
Wow.
He didn't play a lot that game, but we had him there ready to go. And again, he didn't practice much there, but he knew the base stuff from playing JV ball and was able to help us out.
A lot of veer that week, huh?
It was against Madison, so we just went opposite of him, honestly. But but he knew what to do, and he was ready. He's a physical kid, so. But again, I can't stress enough coaching those guys because we coach them all on JV. Juice and I are, get on there. All our coaches coach those same guys, and then if they can make it to the JV game, I've got a couple JV coaches, but for the most part, he and I are calling that JV stuff. Or Wheeler was a head coach for a while, so those kids are getting the system even when they're young.
Yeah. So spinning back to, I know we're jumping around here. Let's get back into the in-game stuff. How is it? Because most of us coaches that have coached on split unit squads where I have all the defensive guys and someone has all the offensive guys, when they, in between drives, we're able to get them off, under the tent, watch the iPad, communicate and all that stuff. How does communication change for you guys knowing that a kid may have to go right back out there? How do you get those key things communicated with your two-way players?
Yeah, I think one of the things I try to do is go to those coaches and let those coaches know, look, when you can grab them, grab them. You know what I mean? That they may not get that information right away like the other group is getting it, but if there is a timeout, if there's a water break, in Florida we get that water break. Whenever there's a stoppage of play to try to grab that kid and get that information to him, we may be on offense, but if Coach Elms has got to come out there and tell one of those receivers that's a DB, hey, this is a change or an adjustment we're making. He tries to get that information to them. If they're not on a special teams, but a lot of our guys are, try to get it to them then. So really any chance you can to get that information to them, get it to them. But again, I think those guys are elite players for a reason, and they're pretty good about making those quick adjustments themselves, or, you can tell them something once and they're pretty good about it.
Coach, kind of piggybacking off that question, there becomes a lot of situations in games where you got to make sure the correct personnel is on the field, right?
Yep.
So that takes a lot of communication between the coordinator, the assistants. What do you guys have in place to kind of aid yourself in that, since you guys since you have a lot of guys staying out on the field?
Yeah. Again, I think depending on how the game goes in a field, early down stuff has always been big for us to make sure we have, or getting those guys a rest if we feel like we need to. We're so multiple on offense with so many different formations. Sometimes they don't have a choice. If we're in spread, whatever, and those receivers have to go, they have to go. But if we feel like we get a chance to, maybe give them a breath, run the ball here for a minute, stay in some ace, stay in some base personnel to give them a break, we'll do that. But again, same thing. It just depends on how the game's going, what the feel is. And, sometimes they don't have a lot of choice to not stay out there on that field if that's the case. But if we can early in a drive, I think has always been big for us. Let's get them 2 or 3 plays. That may go a long way.
Yeah. Talk about when you're prepping for the game, you have all these game situations we always talk about as coaches, right? And so when you don't have a full week, and I know you just have that day, are you guys getting a lot of situational stuff in with those guys, those players? Are you saying, hey, here's our third and long play, or hey, defensively, here's our Hail Mary defense. Let's make sure to practice this. Let's practice backed up or in their territory, red zone, all this stuff. Are you able to get enough time in those game situations weekly?
Yeah, I think so. No, you're exactly right. That's the best time to do it. Look, we make sure when we're in red zone, if I've got big receivers, and, again, I'll go back to the Hampton kid this year, he's got to make sure he gets those specific type things, because we're probably going to target him a good bunch in that area. So, we asked him to move around from a receiver standpoint this year so people couldn't double him certain games. And so he absolutely had to make sure he got those reps and he knew what to do. But again, I didn't need to see him out, middle of the field, drive starters, some of those easy things that we were working on. And I think it's the same defensively. If we're in our nickel package and we're trying to do certain things that require him to communicate or be a big part of it, he's got to be in. But if it's not, again, we're constantly trying to get our younger kids ready to go, especially early in the season, because, again, we think it's paid dividends for us down the line to have that depth late in the year. And I think our coaches do a really good job of that during practice. Hey, let's throw these young guys in certain situations and get them ready.
See how they react.
Yep.
Absolutely. How has having a bunch of two-way players affected your chemistry? It's been good?
Yeah, I think it's been good. Kids want to win, man. So, I don't think it's been as much. Again, different years require different things. And so in 2022, when we lost to Cocoa in the state final, we did not have a ton of kids going both ways for a while. And then as the year went on, we kind of started implementing more. This year, we had a bunch more going both ways, especially at the skill position. So chemistry's good. But again, those kids went back to playing positions they played when they were younger that we got a chance to see. Again, I'll go the Danzy kid. He's an elite, one of the best running backs in the country. But he also played a lot of safety this year because we didn't have the depth, and it was a really, really good safety for us.
Yeah, no doubt. All that makes perfect sense, and how everyone interacts becomes such a super important part, especially if you're going to make the runs the way your team does.
Yeah.
You guys year in and year out are making a deep run in the playoffs, doing those things. So chemistry and how you handle all that becomes a really big factor for you.
Yep.
So talk about player feedback. I know you briefly have said a couple times we trust our kids and they tell us things, but how does that player feedback happen for you throughout the week and on game night?
Yeah, I think talking to our seniors, talking to our veteran players, one of the things, talking to our quarterbacks, one of the things that I try to do offensively, and this is maybe just me playing quarterback in high school, receiver in college, is to empower those guys to make their own checks, to really communicate on the sideline what they see. Because ultimately, we're up tempo on offense. I would say it's a very educated guess on how we're calling things based on different stuff. But they've got the ability and need to have the ability to adjust themselves. So we trust them. If they come back and say, look, coach, they're playing single high or they're playing, two-man and some of those things, we can really, especially I had my son a year ago and he was so good at that, saying, listen, we can really work the middle of the field right now the way that they're playing this thing versus, look, there's nothing much in the middle. We've got to work some one-on-ones on the outside and those kind of things in the pass game. And we just know our kids. Again, they've played a lot of football. They've been around us a lot. And so if they've got something to say and they've worked hard and they've earned it, we try to make sure we listen to them and take those things into consideration.
Yeah, that's, funny enough, that was going to be my next question. I was going to say, hey, how's that influenced your coaching? And you answered that in that same question. So good answer, because you covered two questions there.
Yeah, I mean, listen, when we come off, you talked about coming off of sidelines and making adjustments and checks. The first thing that I like to do, just as the head coach briefly, is run over to those O-line and say, guys, do we still like what we worked on this week? You know what I mean? This is what we said we thought we could do. Are we still good? And again, I like the feedback from them. Like, yeah, coach, we're good. Not yeah, we're kicking their butt good, but no, the alignment's good. We feel pretty good about it. But there's been times where, like, coach, like he's quicker than I thought he was. So or listen, I can't reach him, but I can kick him out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So those kind of things certainly help me as a play caller and help our OC and to do those things. But again, I've known a lot of these kids and feel like if somebody's saying it that's got good stuff and I trust them, I think those are good things.
And that feedback from the offensive line is incredibly useful during the game. They probably have some of the best insight running the same plays over and over and over and seeing it on a daily basis and then going out to the game. Oh, here's what we expected. Here's what's different. It really helps you from the sideline kind of put your eyes into the game.
Yeah, and everybody's iPads and the TVs and the monitors in the back. But like you guys have said, we don't get a chance to do that as much. I like looking at the iPad as much as the next guy, but I've got to manage a game. We've got to do some of those things. So for me, again, I go back to that feel. I like to talk to the kids and ask them, are we still good? Talk to our quarterbacks. Like, look, do you still feel good about what you and I watched on film and we said this was going to be good this week? Or, no, coach, like I don't like it right now. And I'm okay with no. I just need to know yes or no.
Yeah, and you definitely hit a nice touch there for Matt being an O-line coach. I saw him perk up a little when you said, I love to go over to the O-line and ask him.
Yeah.
Matt was like, woo, what's up?
Yep.
Oh, that's perfect. Well, Matt, do you have any other, Coach answered a bunch of my questions. I feel really good about that and how now I know how to run my two-way guys. It'll be perfect for if I ever go back into it. What other questions you have for him, Matt?
I mean, Coach, the success you've seen there at Florida High, give us something that you can kind of attribute to that too. Like, I know you've had a very consistent coaching staff there.
Yeah.
You have a lot of good players, but when you look at your program, what are those key things that you know you can hang your hat on at the end of the day and go, because we continue to do this, we're going to continue to be successful?
Yeah, you said it first and foremost. I think my assistant coaches are unbelievable at what they do. Our guys care about these kids so much. We've known our kids. Some of them have known these kids since elementary. And I think our assistant coaches really pour their heart and soul into these kids in a lot of ways. So that trust goes a long way. And then I think the thing that we've been the most proud of is the development of our kids. We've really developed these kids to be really good football players. And, I think when you're really, really good, that we've tried to make you elite. If you're an average player, we've tried to make you good. So, and that just takes time. There is no magic to this. It's weight room time. It's off-season time. It's summertime. And so I just think the consistency within that and our staff, having 4 or 5 guys on my staff that I've either coached with for 18 years plus or known since I played with them in high school, and they've been on our staff for 10 plus years. That continuity is really, really good, and it's very genuine, and our kids can feel that too.
And is Coach Bradburn the only coach you've kicked off staff so far?
I was going to say that.
Probably. No, I didn't kick him. I hated to lose him, man. He was a big part of our success early on when we were young, and we thought we knew it all, and we didn't. But we had some really good runs and some good years with a lot of energy. But no, Kyle did a good job, and so he was coaching my running backs way back then, and man, it was a lot of fun. We were young coaches, and we were enthusiastic, and we were in it. And we were winning and we were doing good things, but there's still got to be a lot of development. And I think that's the thing that we've tried to do is take those young kids and develop them and coach them up on JV. And, I think Thursday nights are about as serious as Friday nights for us. We take a lot of pride in that. And because we know down the road, those dividends are going to pay big for us.
And can you put some perspective to your school? I know you're in a little bit different situation than a traditional public school. You talked about your coaches knowing these players from the time they're young. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about your school and give some background on that?
Yeah, we're a public charter school, K through 12. Florida High has been around. It's the second oldest school, I believe, in Leon County. So it's a unique dynamic with a lot of kids there that grow up, mostly from kindergarten till 12th grade or at least middle school. So we watch them, when they're in middle school, practice on the field right next to us. Get a chance to know them. I teach 8th grade, so I know these middle school kids. And then when they get to us, we really have a good rapport with them, and we can really try to push them and develop them. And I think our assistant coaches have done a remarkable job of that.
Coach, and I think you're pretty lucky from this aspect. 2 of your assistant coaches are also deans on campus, correct?
Yeah. Yep, they are. And again, that ability to walk around campus, know the kids, garner that trust, is really, really big. And they were classroom teachers first, but now they're 2 deans. And so, it's a unique dynamic at our school. It's fun. But like I said, I think we have 17, 18 seniors this year. We were 17 or 18 the year before, and I don't know the exact number, but I bet if we're 18 seniors in these last 2 years, I bet 15 of them have all been together since middle school.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Yeah.
Sorry, and awesome in such a good way. So, Coach, we end every podcast with this question.
All right.
I always tell the joke that at some point coaches are going to figure out what it is because they're going to listen, but no one does. So, what is?
Kyle, I couldn't turn on the computer, so let's understand that here.
It's Coach. I appreciate the nice lie there, but what is the one thing that you guys do better than any other program that you can tell us, or what is the most unique thing that your program does that you can tell coaches out there? And don't worry, we always get long pauses after this question, so you can take your time here, Coach.
Yes, it's a really good question. Um,
So while you're thinking about it, Kyle,
yeah,
I
man,
know.
Think
Go
about
ahead,
it for a second.
go ahead.
no, I know you're good. I was, what do we, man, I think that, we make our kids about as tough as they can be and squeeze that towel completely dry. Whatever talent or ounce that those kids have in them, that we find a way to get everything out of them when it's all said and done. Whether they're 5 stars or no stars, all of those kids become really good players. And then I'll say this: I think that our practices are really, really good. I would, have let people come and watch our practices, and we try to model them after the professionals and certainly colleges, that we go really fast with no downtime. And I would challenge anybody to see the amount of reps our kids get on both sides of the ball in a 2 hour and 20-minute practice.
Yeah, that's an awesome point. Coach, the other thing I love from the time I was there, I wonder if you still do it. What was the drill you did very beginning of practice?
Yeah, step right and read. So,
so not that one, the other one, the hitting drill. Like
Seminole Alley.
Yes, Seminole.
Yeah.
Just
yeah.
Real quick, Coach, kind of talk about that. I know everyone kind of does some kind of version of it, but I really liked yours when I was there.
Yeah, everybody's Oklahoma and all those things. We've all taken it and tried to modernize it, but we go 2 linemen at a time versus 2 D linemen at a time, and a running back and a linebacker. And again, I don't think I'm reinventing the wheel here, but it's extremely competitive. But I think the one thing we do is you get 1 rep. You don't get any more do-overs or, man, I wish I'd have taken a better step. You get 1 shot to make sure that you are absolutely ready to go at the beginning of practice, just like you get 1 shot at the end of the game, 4th down or whatever it is, to try to create that. And then the receivers, we go, 2 receivers versus 2 DBs. And again, we run the quick screen, the bubble stuff. They have to get the play from me, open field type tackling. And, that's really after we stretch, that's the very first thing we do, is jump right into that.
Love that.
Coach, and I used to love that because it got very intense very quick in practice.
Really quick.
There were times when I was there with those guys, and I can remember all of them, between Calvin and Brandon and all those other guys, and we were there, and it was, like you said, they only got 1 rep. So if they lost, they were pissed.
Absolutely.
And there was John for the rest of practice over that 1 drill. And it was awesome to see how intense and how much ownership kids had that immediately in practice. And they were locked in.
It did. It got those competitive juices flowing too, because somebody was going to lose. There are no stalemates in that situation. So
correct.
Somebody was going to have to go into the next drill or the next situation, not happy about it and do something about it.
Hey, Coach, Matt, did you have anything else? All right.
Yeah, I got another question.
Yeah, man.
I'm going to throw out, and it's more of a situational thing that always used to bother me as a head coach. And I'm sure, since you got the kindergarten dads and those people around your program, what do you tell the kindergarten, the 3rd grade dad that comes in and goes, how much weight does my son need to be lifting in the off season as a kindergartner?
I tell them don't. You know what I mean? I tell them once they get to January after their 8th grade season, we will start teaching them how to go. And until then, I would encourage them not to do anything other than compete. I'm a big advocate of competing as much as you can. Once football season's done, go compete in something else. And my kids play soccer, and they love it. And that competition, and then they go to track or baseball. So I wanted my own kids and our kids to compete as much as they can, because when you compete, you got a choice. You're either going to back down or you're going to fight. And I would prefer to know who you are and what you stand for when it comes time to it.
Yeah, 100%, Coach. that dual sport mentality, we always just tell kids, either you're going to go join another sport or you're going to condition with us.
Yeah. And
it was kind of a veiled threat. We didn't really want to do anything with them, but we wanted them to go compete in something else. So we had to almost give that semi-threat, go do something else, because we don't want to see you, not in a bad way. We will come to your games, but we don't want to see you after school.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Coach,
I've asked my kids this, Kyle, why do you not want to go compete? All of a sudden you start asking that question and they start really thinking, who are you? Because you tell me you want to be a competitor on Friday night, but now I'm telling you, go compete. So
Love
because
that.
if you don't say that, a college coach is.
sure,
And that's the
100%.
key
Well, we
thing.
tell them, yeah.
The first thing a lot of recruiters say is, why doesn't
What
he
else
run
does he
track?
do? Yep.
What else does he do? Why doesn't he run track? What are his times?
Yep.
What is his weight lift and all that stuff? So, well, Coach Hickman, thank you for joining us tonight on the Board Drill Podcast. For those of you listening, you can reach out to us anytime if you have any questions for Coach Hickman. It's the Board Drill Podcast at gmail.com, or you can hit us up on Twitter. I'm told it's now called X at Board Drill Pod. We did not have enough letters for podcast, so it's at Board Drill Pod. If you have any questions for Coach Hickman, any questions for me and Matt, or any ideas of topics you'd like to listen to in the future, we're open to any and all things. Again, our mission statement here is to help high school football coaches across the country. So if there's anything as a coach or any kind of personnel that you'd like to hear, we will go find a guest who knows a lot more than Matt and I, because we'll tell you that we don't know very much. So we're going to find another coach like Coach Hickman that can answer all of those questions. So until next time, thanks for tuning into the Board Drill Podcast. From Matt and I signing off, thank you. And Coach Hickman, thank you once again for being on tonight.
Yeah, man, appreciate it. Thanks for having me, and I love the name. I forgot to tell you guys that. Board Drill, man. Love it.
Yeah, we
Thank you,
toiled
Coach.
a long time over that name until we came up with the answer. So
No, I love it. Love it.
Best drill. Best drill in
all
football.
right. Have a good night.
All right, man. Thanks, buddy.